Hello, boys and girls. It's Doctor Who here. Welcome to Who Corner to Corner podcast. In this week's episode, Paul and Geoff and my jolly good daughter, whose name is Freya, are going to talk to you all about the wonderful 1960s films Doctor Who, that's me, and the Daleks. And also the sequel film, which is Doctor Who, that's also me, and the Dalek invasion of Earth 2150 AD. It's a very, very long title, but that's because it's very, very popular and features our sworn enemies, the Daleks. Whoa! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, dear listeners. Yes, it's not actually Doctor Who, Peter Cushing. It is Paul, Geoff, and Freya.
Really?
Yes, it is really. But I bet everybody would fool.
Our technology is not that advanced.
No, it really isn't. No. But in this very special podcast, we are indeed talking about the two rather wonderful, fabulous Doctor Who and the Daleks movies from the 1960s. Now, why is Freya here? Because obviously I've seen these lots of times. Geoff, I'm not sure how many times you've seen them, but let's say you are of a slightly older generation. Freya is basically an angsty teen, so we'll see what she makes of them. Well, is that not accurate? What do you say?
I don't know what angst means.
Excellent. It's an angsty teen.
It means you're full of rage.
Rage.
Full of rage at the world.
That kind of thing, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we look at the very first one of these films then, which is Doctor Who and the Daleks. These films are obviously based upon the BBC television serials. I can't stop doing it now. That's still our received pronunciation.
I've noticed.
Oh dear! Obviously, it's based on the Daleks, but you all knew that, didn't you? Which is, for Freya's benefit, the second story of Doctor Who. I did tell you that, haven't I? Yeah. So, Geoff, how many times have you seen this, my friend, and what did you think of it?
Once.
Once? Really? What? Just recently?
Yep, when you sent me the Blu-ray. It is the only time. And I did really enjoy it. I've got to be honest, as I was watching it, I was like, this is a bit weird, because this is literally a larger budget version of the episode from the show. And I was like, it's so weird. Like, I wonder what it was like back in, when was this one? 66?
65.
65, and the second one came out the year after. Like,
yeah.
I was trying to think, what was it like? What would a modern equivalent be like? It would be like having Game of Thrones on TV, but then a massive budget version of it in the cinema with a different cast doing the same episodes.
Yes, if
do you know what
Game
I mean?
of Thrones was produced on
a
sixpence using string and sellotape, and cardboard cutout dragons in 4:3 ratio,
or maybe not Game of Thrones is too.
But I get you.
Do you know what I mean?
Probably more like that sort of thing. Okay, so we have Doctor Who. By William Hartnell, the first Doctor, whose fame and popularity suddenly exploded into global fame, or at least UK-wide fame, because suddenly Doctor Who was a thing, wasn't it? After that, okay, so we have An Earthly Child, and then we have the thing about the cavemen, and then suddenly from there we go to this extraordinary petrified planet, and we meet the Daleks, and on the back of that serial, suddenly Doctor Who becomes incredibly popular. Millions of viewers are tuning in every week, and the old filmmakers decide that they ought to be able to cash in on this success. Everybody likes Daleks. Dalek mania is sweeping the country alongside the Beatles and pop art and all that sort of stuff.
And do you remember they didn't want to?
No. I'm not that old.
It's okay.
Do you remember? Actually, he might not.
Do you remember?
But they didn't want to include the Daleks, did they? Or bug-eyed aliens, as I believe they called it.
BEMs.
Back then.
Yeah, that's right.
BEMs. And imagine if that hadn't happened.
We just had a teenage what?
The producers of the show, right back in the early days, they wanted it to be, educational, historical, etc. Which it largely was. but they didn't want the kind of sci-fi element to be too too big in it, and there was a real kind of desire to not include the Daleks, wasn't there, Paul? And to have
there
that,
was, yeah,
and
bug-eyed monsters. Verity Lambert called them.
That's
and
it.
She didn't want them. And of course, they contracted Terry Nation, who was a pretty well-known comedy writer and what have you, to write a script for this thing. And he turned in this, and it turned out that actually he'd used bug-eyed monsters. But he said, well, they're not bug-eyed monsters. They're tanks, basically, with hideous mutations inside of them.
Yeah.
And they're kind of allegorically misogynist, racist, Nazi-type fascistic aliens that hate everything that is not them because they're afraid of it.
Yeah, yeah. And
it became really popular.
Well, yeah, bizarrely, yeah. Imagine if they had, if they'd overruled it and said, scrap it, we'll get another script in.
Yeah, we'd got as far as Marco Polo, mate, and that would have been the end of it.
That would have been it, yeah. Doctor Who really may have been a footnote in TV history.
Daleks made Doctor Who. Well, they're certainly one of the key ingredients.
Yeah, definitely.
Even
So it's not.
knows what a Dalek is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I think Freya. Along with the Tardis and the concept of the Doctor, almost everyone knows that. They know what Doctor Who is, even if they don't know, specifically who's the Doctor at this moment in time or whatever it might be. So yeah, you're right, Paul. Dalek Mania exploded, didn't it?
It did, yes, and obviously then we have the film company. Was it Aru Films? I think something like that. Who decided Amicus Productions? That's the one. Aru Productions, Amicus Productions, BBC TV Productions. All of those kind of things combined to obviously with licensing and everything else to make this big screen, widescreen indeed, Technicolor Doctor Who and the Daleks. And they pulled in Peter Cushing, who was quite a big star. Back in those days.
Hammer. Yeah, I looked him up, and I knew he was kind of synonymous with Hammer films. I didn't realise just how many he'd done.
He'd done loads.
Did loads, but it was quite interesting as well. After his wife died, I can't remember when it was, in the 70s maybe. He sort of never really recovered from it, and he was very different after that. Apparently. Her loss.
Sad.
Yeah,
his loss really affected him. Yeah, he was a big star, wasn't he? Yeah, and
he was a very big star. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll talk a bit about him in a minute, I'm sure. I thought I recognised this other guy in it, and it took me a little while. I didn't kind of link the names together. But it's Record Breakers.
Ian.
Yeah.
Talking about Ian.
Roy Castle, yeah.
Roy Castle from You Want to Be a Record Breaker.
Record Breakers, yeah. I didn't realise he acted back then.
I don't think he acted a lot, to be honest.
Well, I'm not sure if I would call it acting anyway.
Call it acting.
Yeah, he appeared in the film.
No. Hold on, take that back.
Because, don't be mean.
Don't be mean, yeah. Because actually,
he was. No, I don't mean he was wooden, but He was himself. Now, one thing that really surprised me was it's quite slapstick, wasn't it? But because of him,
is a bit of slapstick, isn't it?
And this was a comment I one of my notes that I made. The whole thing, and particularly in the second film, was kind of a lot more fun and warm, particularly the Doctor.
You said that when we were watching it, didn't you?
I did say
the Doctor's a lot nicer in this one.
A lot nicer.
Yeah.
Which is quite an interesting thing in a way, isn't it? Because you think, so Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor, is often regarded as being the first Doctor that really becomes more childish in a lot of ways, right? Okay, I know there's probably going to be people writing in and say, well, William Hartnell was very childish as well. He was in a different sort of way, because I think
but it's not how...
he was kind of finding his way, and they were all sort of finding their characters, weren't they, in the TV series?
Yeah.
And William Hartnell, I was watching the first episode of the Daleks serial, and Barbara and Ian don't trust him at all. They're very, you know, they think in a way he's kind of kidnapped them. They're never going to get back to Earth. They're not sure what's really going on in his head. They think that he knows stuff that he's not telling them, and they just don't trust him. Whereas their relationship with Peter Cushing's Doctor Who is very, very different. And
well, it's very different, and also it's Roy. It's his Ian that triggers Tardis. It's not the Tardis. It was just Tardis.
No, it's Tardis.
Triggers
Tardis.
Tardis.
T, small case, the rest of it.
Triggers TARDIS to go off in.
Still
no, because she still says it's an acronym.
Still says it's an acronym.
It's quite interesting, like that point that you've just made there, and how different Cushing's Doctor's persona is, and I wonder whether, well, they must have been deliberate choices to kind of take that away a little bit, because Troughton would he have been on screen yet? Not quite yet, would he?
No,
not yet. Because I was wondering whether.
In a way, it's almost like Peter Cushing's portrayal of the Doctor kind of
influence
figures Troughton's Doctor.
It was like that. Peter Cushing's Doctor's like. Did you say Peter Capaldi's Doctor?
Yes, I did.
When
say
you were
that.
watching it, we said.
Yeah, you see that he runs like a penguin.
Yeah. He is a very the grandfatherly thing is played up quite a lot with it, and as I was watching it, I was like, so far he's just portrayed as essentially a mad scientist. He's built TARDIS. There's no hint. He's built it. There's no talk of it being alien technology or anything like that. But I thought, well, of course,
all those complications are just not there, are they?
But none of that stuff was present in the main show at that point anyway, was it? So that I thought, of course, that's why it's kind of it's very much like
they in the very first episode, in the pilot episode, I think Susan and the Doctor both tell Ian and Barbara they're not from this time, or they're from another dimension, or something.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
That.
It's not explicit that they are aliens, is it?
Knows at that point.
And
they're exiles cut off from their home planet, and one day they will return. Or something.
That's it. It's not sort of clear. Are they from the future Earth or whatever? And when we now watch an Unearthly Child, obviously we've got decades worth of stuff that's come after it and the knowledge about it. But when if you watched it, in '63, you didn't know anything at all. So he probably just looked like this kind of mad grandfatherly scientist type of thing. Hence why the film was like that. Yeah, but I liked Cushing's portrayal. It was quite warm, and it was a lot more kind of fun and joyful in a way.
Definitely joyful, There's a lot of glee, isn't there? There's a definite mischievousness in his eyes and the way he walks, and that sort of twinkle, which I think Hartnell does get that in some of his later stories, but it's not early on.
No, and when, I don't know about you, but when I think about Doctors, each one has got a sort of, more prominent, kind of trait than another Doctor has, and Hartnell's is not sort of cheerful. That's not how he comes to mind when I first think of him.
Not predominantly cheerful. No, you didn't really describe him as that. So what about the other characters then? So you've already mentioned that we have Roy Castle as Ian, a very a very much more bumbling Ian Chesterton.
Yes, his Ian was a lot more calamitous and like I said, slapstick, and kind of friendly, dare I say, whereas in the show Ian is a lot more kind of uptight and stuffy a little bit, and this Ian was not that at all, and I really liked him in it. I thought he was great fun. One of my notes, let me just bring this up. So Susan, when it all started, I was like, who is that there? She's tiny young girl. Oh yeah, it's a mini Hermione. It's Susan. Because there was one bit where it made me think of it's not Leviosa, it's Leviosa, with the way she spoke to them. Yeah. So, but I quite liked her as well. Yeah. So
you like Susan as well. What about you? Yeah. What do you think of Ian and Susan? About Ian first. Let's have a look at Ian first. Ian. Tell me about Ian.
He was cool.
He was cool.
I don't know. That's the first adjective that came to mind.
Well, that's a good adjective, but of course now you have to explain it. But I mean, okay, so he starts off as a bit of a bumbler, doesn't he? And he sort of falls on the lever. He's just falling around the place.
Know what that means.
Okay, he's falling around a place. He presses the lever.
Yes.
They shoot off into time and space, and
Yes.
heaven knows where.
That is what
and they end up on the planet. And but somehow there's a point where he stops being a bumbler. And he he finds a kind of heroism.
He does. He finds himself during it and has a little personal journey.
He does.
He does.
An arc, you might call it. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
He does, because I think, was it during the expedition he becomes, he somehow kind of seems to sort of find himself during that expedition into the Dalek city, which I think is quite interesting. And actually is also quite a nice little counterpoint to the Ian of the TV show, because Ian is quite clearly of that sort of archetype, heroic man, where he takes charge of everything.
Whereas this one, it was like, because they'd be like, so like Barbara and Susan stay back.
Yes.
It's like, Ian, come with me, and then he's like, and then Barbara and Susan
Exactly
end
that,
up going
yes.
anyway, because they're like, right, we'd be better anyway.
So in that respect, actually, he kind of goes against the grain, doesn't he? Which I thought was quite a lot of fun, actually, and actually gives the film a little bit more awareness than perhaps the TV show had at that point.
Yeah, I liked him. He was good in it. So what did you think of the design of the whole thing? Because they obviously had more money.
They clearly did, didn't they? They must have had at least a few pounds,
at least
to go
a
on
grand.
That.
Yeah,
they had a budget of $180,000.
Really?
That says pounds.
180,000 sterling.
Well, I was going to say, if it was dollars, it'd probably be even less than that, wouldn't it?
Currency. Yeah. But that's probably quite a lot of money back in them days. It's a reasonable amount, isn't it? 180 grand.
Here, fellow, there's £180,000 to go and make a Doctor Who film. Now go along and do it and get your biggest star to appear in it as the title character.
That's how they used to talk back then, in them days.
Well, it is, yeah.
Received pronunciation, all that stuff.
So one of my notes here is TARDIS is missing the noise when it materialises. They didn't have that.
It didn't always happen in the TV show either. Right?
There we go.
Sometimes it would just fade in and out with no sound whatsoever.
Yeah, it was a bit weird, because it's used to it and it's so identifiable. When it didn't happen, it was a bit weird. I wrote fantastic shot when they come out of the TARDIS for the first time when they've landed on Skaro. Yeah. It's like a nice bit of a crane shot. You could definitely tell, because obviously you are watching a film, but it was obvious because of the fact that it was shot nicely and it was a lot more kind of
green and reds.
Advanced than. Yeah, nice lighting on it. The sort of petrified forest set was really good, and obviously the TV show was always 3 cameras live. Basically, this was a lot more kind of flashy.
They were certainly making use of their widescreen Technicolor, weren't they? Colour, yeah.
That's what you said that when we were watching.
Am I repeating?
Colour, and they're 180 grand. So I've got some good mat work on this. Do you know what mat work is, Freya?
I think we're kind of figuring out. Freya doesn't know a lot.
I ask because you're young and they don't really do it anymore. In the days before CGI, if you wanted to go to an alien planet or do anything really that you couldn't do for real, you would have someone paint the image on glass, and then you would put the real action. There'd be a gap in the in the paint where it would be visible through, and then you'd film the plate of glass with the painting and the stuff on the back of it. So when they were climbing the mountain, that's how they did it. It looked quite good actually.
There's some nice big shots there.
Sure about that in the programme I watched the other day.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what it was called.
Now you know.
Now I know.
Matt.
Matt, MATTE. I felt that the film itself was one of my notes here was it's quite slow, like a lot of '60s films were, and there was lots of long shots with no edits in, and you know, like I said, the TV show was, you know, 3 cameras live, and a lot of films back then, and you more so, you know, even earlier, like the '40s and stuff, like old Universal horrors, it was kind of just theatre. You know, that they plonked a camera there and did it. You got very little in the way of close-ups and stuff like that. You know, it was literally a long shot for a couple of minutes or something, not like shot from miles away.
When Susan's going out to get the stuff,
The radiation drugs.
to get the drugs, yeah, it's literally just like nothing. It's literally just her walking through the
Yeah,
The props.
yeah, the,
yeah, and
set.
and these days you wouldn't. Yeah, you wouldn't do it that way. You know, you'd have close-ups and things. So it's interesting seeing the development of kind of film language and stuff like that. One of my other notes here is there's not much actual Doctor in it.
Do you think so? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Why do you say that, young Geoff? Because he's
Because
not
I
in
didn't
it that
think there was
much.
that much actually.
He's only
I think
contracted
he's in it.
for
I
a
think he's in
few
it
hours.
more than the second one.
I don't.
Yes, I think you're right on that. He disappeared quite a bit in the second one, and we'll talk a bit more about that one shortly. But yeah, there was a point when he reappeared, and I was like, oh yeah, it's his film, yeah, which was a bit odd when it happened.
That's interesting. No, I never thought of
but-
that. Actually, do you know? Honestly, it genuinely never occurred to me that the Doctor wasn't in this it much.
I didn't really.
I don't really think about
I
it.
just noticed. I noticed that other people were in it quite a lot.
Yeah,
but like
so he
I never
shares the
kind of
story.
occurred it to me that meant that he wasn't in it as much.
Interesting idea, young Geoff.
Did you just hear how I said occurred?
I did say it, did that, how you said it.
That was really weird.
Good, actually.
No, it was weird.
A bit weird. Strange.
It was occurring.
Oh, there's what I was looking for. Matt, there we go. That alien vista. Oh, there's that bit where they're climbing up the pipes, isn't it? Into
Yeah.
the mountain, trying to get into
Yeah.
the Dalek city. Which reminds me, actually, a lot. You look at that alien vista with the moon and the mountains and these sort of swampy things down below. It's kind of like Forbidden Planet. You know that film?
Yes,
There's not
yeah.
a huge amount of difference between them in terms of the design and those matte shots, as you put it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That did actually run through my head when I was watching it, because I always think about, you know, it's the
That's the
Id
one.
monster, isn't
Yeah,
it? That in Forbidden Planet, which interestingly was animated by Walt Disney's people.
And again, they
you
would
know,
have
and
probably had
it's
a
just
massive
sort of,
budget in comparison to this.
Yeah.
one.
yeah,
You know, 100
but
extra
quite a
pounds.
similar look to it. Yeah. Yeah, so overall, I really enjoyed it. You know, I thought it was a lot of fun. We did get some comments, I
we
think,
got one.
didn't we?
We got one.
Oh, was it? Was that from
That's the
Aidan?
one. Yeah, that singular comment.
Yeah.
Obviously, these are really popular films.
Let me have a quick look. Well, there's been a lot of, because the reason we're doing this now is because they've been re-released, isn't it? And you know, there's been quite a lot of hype about them all recently.
Well, they've been in the cinema,
yeah, here we
haven't they? Which I really wanted to go
Yes.
see these in the cinema. Actually, I thought that
Yeah,
would have been
I remember you
great.
said you did. Yeah.
But I
But
didn't get
you
around to
didn't.
it. No, I didn't. I think it was only like a limited
No.
release.
Probably wasn't
Like,
around
over-
there anyway.
So
Probably not,
Aidan.
back of nowhere.
Aidan CG01 says, I probably first saw the movies when I was about 11 or 12. It's that long ago, I can't remember. And I instantly fell in love with them. I love Cushing's take on Doctor Who and the big colourful Daleks. What's not to love? Rewatched Invasion Earth not so long ago. I feel the more I watch them, the more I love them. It does make me wish we'd got a third film, but the two we've got are brilliant. I'm glad he's teed up about the third film, because we can talk about that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I'll tell you what I think about these, because it's like, I mean, this one is made a little bit later than the very start of Doctor Who. Obviously, the Daleks is the second story in the whole of Doctor Who. The whole 60-odd years, the Daleks is literally only the second story. And you can see that it's kind of finding its feet. It's a very well-constructed story, you know, and it's got a lot going for it, and it's pretty fantastic. But it's very alien. It's very creepy. It's got a really weird, unsettling vibe to it, which is good, because I like that. But clearly, what these guys decided was they're just going to make a film for kids. They're not going to try to be too clever or anything. They're not going to try to pull out any kind of hidden themes or any sort of deeper narratives or stuff like that. They're just going to concentrate on the bits of that serial which represent the kind of, the actual story, if you like. It's all condensed down, and the actual driver for a lot of the film, which makes me think, it's not Ian, because he's not the heroic man type, alpha male character that he is in the TV show, right? It's not Barbara, because actually Barbara, she's a bit rubbish in this. She's just not even, she's hardly present, to be honest. It kind of could be the Doctor, but I think more than the Doctor, or more than Doctor Who, it's Susan, the wee girl. She drives a lot of this, doesn't she?
Because it's a film for kids, they need a character that they relate to.
And she's a good character.
She's great.
Yes.
She's like you said.
Intelligent.
Yeah, she is good.
She's kind of like a proto Hermione. I mean, clearly that sort of character that Hermione is probably based on. Those sort of, those strong-willed small children for who represent their readership and viewership. They go throughout fiction, throughout ages. It's all the little girl hero, the little boy hero. So that as children, we can vicariously live out our fantasies and dreams and become heroic by reading and watching these stories. And she very much is that. And I love this film for that. And despite everything else, which is also great, I love it for putting Susan front and centre, because the BBC TV show, Susan, she does the same sort of things, but she mostly just twists her ankle a lot. And that's not Carol Ann Ford's problem. It's Terry Nation's problem for writing her that way and thinking, I can't deal with all these people. So Susan, she's a rubbish teenage girl. She's just going to do what rubbish teenage girls do and break her ankle and sit out most of the story.
She did hurt her ankle in the second one.
She did, but she picked herself back up.
She did.
Yeah.
We'll come to that one again.
That's quite interesting, what you've said there, because like I said, it was odd watching. It makes a change, but it was odd watching like what was essentially a bigger budget version of the TV serial, and because they've only kind of focused on the hits part of it all. That's another reason why it was odd, and I don't mean like I did enjoy it, but it was a strange feeling to it's like when you watch a remake of a film and you're always comparing it to the original version. Is it better? Is it whatever? So it was a bit like that, and it just sort of seems mad that this was the film that they made, but you can see why they did
absolutely,
it.
Well,
because Dalek Mania.
Well, you, Freya, you haven't seen those original
No,
Dalek
I
stories at all,
haven't.
have you? So
No.
this is literally your first experience of that particular story.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's also that's interesting.
I had a
That's interesting what you've just said there. Yeah.
What was your view?
Yeah. So what
My
was your view?
view was, it was good. I really liked it. It was better than I thought it would be. Definitely.
What did you think it was going to
Yeah,
be?
I don't know. I
same.
just didn't think it was gonna be like. I didn't think I was gonna like it as much, or like find it as good as I did find it. I don't know, especially because at the start,
I must
on
admit,
the DVD that we had, it goes like,
Oh yeah.
some of this content is like outdated
Of
and
its day.
of its day or something like that, and could be offensive towards some viewers. And I was like, oh, what's it gonna say? Because I pick up on a lot of that stuff, and it wasn't actually too bad.
Well, they cut the bits where Doctor Who swears at the Daleks because that was just too much. You bloody tin
They
pots.
did. That doesn't exist. It's just finding out.
My voice is not as good as yours.
But you've got a thing about old
interestingly-
films, though, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, by which I mean anything pre-2010.
No, I watched High School Musical.
Oh,
That was 2006. That was pre-me.
Pushing it there.
before that, you tend to get
Do you know
a
what
bit
one of
anxious,
my
don't you? A little bit of anxiety creeps in.
yeah. One of my kids actually asked me the other day, was the world black and white?
What's the what? The word?
I feel like everyone's thought that though. I thought that when I was younger.
Did you really?
Yeah, was the world
When I
black
was
and
little,
white? Yeah,
because old films are in black and white, and you're like, wait, was everything black and white? Because the only pictures you see and the only evidence you see is black and white. So you're like, wait, there's just no colour.
Yeah.
There was no colour in the world until
But
you
I
came
was
along.
like 7.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's an understandable thought to
Indeed.
have. So, Freya, what's your problem with old
I
films?
don't know. I don't think
What is your
I
problem?
don't think I have a problem.
They are very no. They are no.
It's just some of them annoy me
not
because
everyone
everything's like obviously kind of outdated, because they'll say stuff and even though it it was offensive, but it wasn't seen to be offensive then, and it's just like it annoys me.
But also the whole style of things is so different, and not everyone kind of gets on with like really early Doctor Who. Things are often a lot slower paced, both in terms of the story, also the way it's filmed. You don't have the technology in things that we do now, and also that's I keep saying interesting, but that's a point. Like we might laugh at something old now, but I wonder what the audiences of the time did, because you knew no different.
Clearly, they really got behind it, didn't they? Because Daleks were like as popular as the Beatles and Elvis, and
they really were,
pop art and everything. Really, they became.
Is that all you think about when you think 60s?
Yeah, it is. When I think 60s,
Beatles and pop art,
and the Avengers, stuff like
He's
that.
said
That's
it
a big thing.
now.
But it is, they became part of that culture. They were embedded, and by definition, Doctor Who became embedded within culture as well. That's why these films were made, because they were explosively massive at the time in a way that I think we can't really sort of understand now, because we're so used to it. We exist further down the timeline when all that stuff is just part of what we grow up with, and we don't think anything of it. A Dalek is a Dalek, like you said. Even your sister knows what a Dalek looks like. She wouldn't get excited about it. She wouldn't go out buying ice lollies shaped like Daleks and Dalek toys and Rollikins and all the other things that made Terry Nation a shed load of money in his career.
Yes.
So
the designer, the actual look, the guy who designed it, whose name escapes me right now. He hails from. That's it. He hails from Horsham,
really?
where I'm from.
That's interesting.
Where I live. He does, yeah. And he has a plaque down West Street, which has got plaques for various things that people are well known for from around here and stuff like that. And he's got a plaque.
Got a blue plaque on.
So I might have mentioned this before as well. No, it's not a blue plaque. It's like a stone plaque on the floor. No, it's not where he lived. I know the ones you mean. But in my film festival a couple of years ago, Horsham Film Festival, if anyone's interested, one of the winning films was called what was it called? Doctor Who and Me, I think it was called. And it was a mockumentary about a guy who moved to Horsham, and he changed his name to Sylvester Baker, or something like that. And he was obsessed with Doctor Who, and he came here because Ray Cusack was from here, and he was embarking on a mission to get a 300-foot concrete Dalek erected in Greenland, in the fields around here, and this was his mission. It was actually really funny. Brilliant. So if anyone wants to see that, let us know. I'll post the link to it. It was a really good little film. So yes, I understand where you're coming from, Freya. Early stuff early films are very, very different to what we have today, and I think sometimes people who don't they miss out on things because the perception of of what it will be like is like, I'm not going to get on with that because it's
so you don't always even
slow, and it's
even
kind
get
of like
first
theatre.
base then, do you? And you like I said, you do end up missing out on things. So yes, this is true.
Yeah, like the old Universal monster
love
films.
Those.
They're
I've
great,
got
but they're
so
different. Yeah, I've got some of them. Yeah, but yeah, not people don't know them because it's so old.
It's so old.
So
there we go. So that's
old.
That's the first of the Doctor Who and the Daleks films, which I think we're kind of unanimously agreed is a good bit of fun. It's a lot of fun. Would you say? Would you agree with
Yes,
it was great fun.
It was very fun. There we go. So that's a good one. That's Doctor Who and the Daleks, the first of these films, which was a very popular success, and we've all agreed that it was good and a lot better than we probably thought it was going to be. Because to be honest, actually, I've only seen it once before as well. I saw it yesterday. Right. I've seen the next one we're going to talk about a lot, but the first one, the Dalek film, I've only seen like once or maybe twice before.
Oh, you Paul shamed me for having not seen it.
Did not, you big jester. I did not do such a thing at all. I
don't know why I
use my
no, you didn't.
gatekeeper
I'm
card.
lying. I don't know why I hadn't watched it before. I think I don't know, just because it wasn't part of the main show. I was just a bit like, I'm just kind of not. Yeah, I'm not too fussed on it really. But I'm pleased I watched it now.
I also think actually that first film is kind of overshadowed by the Dalek Invasion of Earth 2150 or Daleks Invasion Earth 2150, which is almost twice the budget and is I think it is a much bigger film. It's certainly got explosions, hasn't it? It's got stunts.
Sets.
It's got explosions.
It's much bigger.
Sets.
I liked this one more because stuff blew up. There was some great Dalek deaths in it. It was a lot bigger than the first film in every way, I think. And like I said, there was some great Dalek deaths in it as well. I really enjoyed that. Some really good, yeah. And of course, Bernard Cribbins was in it as well. Yeah.
Wilf.
Yeah, starting his Wilf. Yeah, exactly. Starting his Doctor Who connection. Yeah, exactly so that was good. Yeah. So it was quite nice to see young Bernard in it there. What did you guys think of this one?
Go?
You can go.
I can go. Well, if I go, I'm going to be talking for ages. But okay,
That's all right.
yeah, I've always liked this one. This one has an added nostalgia factor to it because this was my very first experience of what I thought back in the 70s when Howard a Lad was actually the first Doctor. I hadn't seen any first Doctor at all. I had vague memories. Well, no, vague memories of early Tom Baker, and I was growing up with later Tom Baker. And I'd heard all these myths about previous black and white doctors, of whom William Hartnell was one of them. But I'd never even seen a picture of him, didn't know what he was. But I do remember when it was like end of term or end of the year, school year, something like that. And there was a special treat at this particular year when an old projector, or it would be old now, but it was a modern projector back in the 70s, right, was wheeled out into the middle of the assembly hall. All us kids sat around cross-legged. This is junior school. So and they feed it. It was literally fed on a reel, right, like old school a reel. Someone unfolded this tiny little projector screen, the sort of thing that I've got in a corner over here, right? You just roll it up and set it up at the back, and it stands at an angle because it's never straight, these things, and it's all connected up to a single big box that gives you the sound, and it's all mono, right? It's mono channel stuff. And this thing just happens in 4 to 3 aspect ratio. And the worst thing about it, although I was entranced by it and I loved it, was that it was actually in black and white, which is weird, right? I didn't know this film was in colour till probably some point in the late 80s when Channel 4 showed it or something. I just thought it was in black and white, or at least my memories of it were in black and white. And I remember sitting through it, sat cross-legged on the floor with all my other school kid friends. And I pretended to have friends. Nobody else could see my friends, but nonetheless, they were there with me, and we just enjoyed it. It was just brilliant. Honestly, I remember this is definitely one of my earliest kind of memories of Doctor Who. Really, was watching this film because I knew it was on a Saturday night, and I was growing up with like the City of Death and stuff like that, and it was all good. But this was like something from the old days, before I was born. Yeah. And it was like, some kind of mythic thing. And I was agog by it because I thought, wow, it's got explosions and we got big Daleks going. And there was no difference in my mind to watching Tom Baker defeating, like Destiny of the Daleks, which I think was probably around the same sort of time. Yeah. And what I was watching on the cinema anyway. It was all of one thing. There wasn't any, in my head, any kind of variance in quality or difference in style. It was just a really exciting Doctor Who adventure with the first Doctor. So I honestly thought Peter Cushing was the definitive first Doctor in black and white when I first watched this film. And I loved it then. And I've watched it countless times, and I still love it now.
Oh, isn't that a beautiful
I'm
story?
gonna wipe a tear from my eye. Look, is that Actually,
That's just
that's just the style or something. That's just
Sweat.
some kind of infection. It's not a tear. I don't do tears. So what about you then, Freya? What do you think? Because you saw this
Me?
today.
me.
You struck me as being someone who's slightly distracted this time round.
I wasn't in the mood today. I have to be in the mood to watch something, and today I just wasn't. But we did anyway. So yeah.
And what did you think of it? Putting your
alright.
mood to one side. It was all right. Better or worse than the first one? What do
I
you
liked
think?
the first one more, but I don't know if that's just because I was more
Angsty.
in the mood to watch it than I was the second one. No, you know why I don't think I like the second one as much? It's because it had all this stuff, and it had all the more set, and the more, like, they had the flying saucer and everything, and to me, it looked terrible.
Did it really?
It looks so
That's
bad.
interesting, isn't it?
And I found it hard to not laugh, and I know that's really bad, but like, some of it, I was
Geoff
like,
has left
some
the
of it,
room.
I was like, wait, you probably actually did that. Like, that's probably an actual explosion,
Yeah.
like near it, and I was like, oh my god. But some of it, I don't know. Yeah.
Freya. Remember what I said earlier? You have to watch these things and accept them for what they were at the time. The fact that you could see the strings on the Dalek saucer at one point, I thought was brilliant.
I love that.
You know,
I did have this, like,
and
internal
actually
battle
some of
in
the
my
stuff
head,
with
though. I was like, right, so it doesn't look very good, and that's fine.
Or
because
convincing, do you mean?
Convincing, yeah.
Convincing. Let's use that word.
And
Yeah.
because it was still good, but like, and then in my head I was like, wait, but I just need to like accept it and just go with it because that's just kind of what
Yes.
Doctor Who was. And as I was watching it, I was like, wait, this is what Doctor Who is, and this is what everyone kind of thinks of when they think Doctor Who. Like, they think of like low budget, like not very good stuff, and even now people don't expect it to be as good as it is. But yeah.
Yeah, it's great now.
Even
Yeah,
that was like
it's
so
not
much
so much
money,
that.
and I know it was like the 60s, so obviously it's not going to be great. But, you know.
Yeah, it's not so much that it was low budget. It's just that is
That's all they could do.
literally, you know, the
That-
technology
that's
at the
how-
time.
I
You know,
found it
so
so cool because like they didn't have much technology and they still managed to do that. Like, that's really cool, man.
yeah. Do you know? I thought some of the shots of the weird flying saucer thing were really
They
good.
were, and it was on strings
you
as well,
know,
because you can see the strings, can't you? There's
It was
a
on-
trail of strings supporting
and on
it.
one
I'm
bit,
blind.
but there was a couple of other bits when it was flying, and it kind of came.
There's
it
an
did
angle
a
on it,
loop,
isn't
I
there?
think,
There's
when it blew
a
up the-
smoothness to the motion of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't wobble. It
and I
literally
was
glides.
like, yeah, and I was like,
They
how have
threw
they
it.
done that? Because in Star
Yeah.
Wars, the way they made
Well,
the
they move the
ships move
camera,
in
don't
that
they,
was
rather than the ship.
they moved the camera so the camera would go towards the ship and then turn and you know move backwards, and that was how they created the movement of the ship, and it was sort of a very kind of early kind of green screen type stuff. You know, it was shot and then put against a painting or whatever later. So I was like, but they wouldn't have done that
No,
back then
strings.
with
Threw it.
Invasion. Yeah, and maybe some sort of
It might have been on
image
some sort
overlay.
of gimbal or counterweighted or something. So it's got that smoothness.
Yes,
to motion, right?
it could have been in the done in camera, but yeah, it was pretty good. And you know, like you see explosions these days, and often they are digitally enhanced and stuff. But those
Those
were
are raw.
You know, some pretty good
Yeah,
pyros
yeah,
and
proper
you know the
explosions.
bit where
Blowing
the
stuff up. That's so cool, man.
where they. When they drove the van
Oh,
down
I love the
through
van!
the little street
Oh,
filled,
that was
filled with
good.
Daleks, yeah.
that
And you know,
Petrified.
you know when
It was, wasn't it?
in The Simpsons, they always take the piss, like when they throw a wooden table over in anger and it bursts into flames and stuff like that. Like the Daleks getting tapped by the van and exploding.
Yeah.
That you know, and also all the Robo Men walking around. It really made me think of the first Austin Powers film where he's in the tunnels and stuff, and Dr. Evil's henchmen are shuffling
There you go,
around.
see? That's the thing.
But that's obviously what he's riffed it on, and whenever I see these, big underground layers in these films, I think, who's paid for all this? And I was thinking, how have the Daleks got money to pay the Robo Men? And then, of course, it was explained by the robotizer that they've got. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. But you know, I think you're bang on there, because like stuff like Austin Powers pulls all of this stuff, doesn't it? It deliberately rips up the 60s, because that's what it's aimed at. That's what it's doing, intentionally, outrageously,
exactly.
having a little bit of fun, but there's a lot of fondness in what it
loving
does
it.
as well.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
also,
Yeah,
as well, this
and
is
like an
kind of
old
like,
Bond.
yeah, this is the same era as James Bond and The Saint and The Man
Yeah.
from U.N.C.L.E., all of that sort of stuff. It's all happening. It's all there. It's all within the culture of cinema and fiction. And it's all outrageous. And it's almost like there's a point where it gets so outrageous, it goes beyond its own ring fence. You know, like you think of like the Batman of the 60s, the old Adam West award show, which just went
So
more and
camp.
more ridiculous, you know, but again, still pulled
Yeah.
on all of that stuff that was churning around it at the time.
Yeah.
God, I wish I was around in the 60s. I really do. I think I would have loved it. Or maybe I wouldn't actually.
Yeah,
Maybe it was
yeah.
actually really crap and they needed all this Technicolor stuff to try and break down the horror of it all. I don't know.
And you know, the image of it, was it really like that? Maybe for some
Yeah, I
people
don't
it
know.
was like the Beatles,
You would,
but
you'd
you know,
have loved it.
not everyone. Yeah, I really enjoyed this film. There was a lot of great stuff in it. Oh, that's right. They pushed the Dalek down the ramp at one point.
that was
It
fun.
exploded when
Grabbed
it got
that-
to the
I
bottom.
love they did it in both of them. They were just like, I love how you can just grab the Daleks and move them. I'd love to see them do that now.
Yeah.
It'd be so funny. Just yank it.
Just yank it around, chuck it down the stairs.
And I also, let me just have a look. One of my notes was, so the Doctor was not in it that much again either. In the second half, he disappeared, and I thought, I suppose this is really just a Daleks film, and
Daleks
they're
are
all
front
different
and
coloured,
centre.
like the paradigm Daleks. That's what I was thinking.
Paradigm
was maybe a
Daleks,
homage
yeah, their
to.
colour scheme is definitely
Yeah,
lifted
yeah,
from this film. And the other one
Yeah,
actually as well.
different. Yeah.
Actually, I was thinking you said, wasn't it, about the
one of
colour
my-
Daleks?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Did
They were
did
all
you?
like blue
Yeah.
and white, apart from
Red.
Yeah, there
Red
was
and
red
black.
and there was a
no,
gold
but
one,
in
I
the
think.
first one,
Yeah,
most of them were the blue and white, and then like the ones that seemed to be higher
blue,
up
blue. Yeah,
were like different colours to like establish a rank.
yeah.
A rank, yes.
One of my notes is the Dalek machine says "total
Ah!
power" on it in large letters, which I quite
I
like.
loved that. I saw that, yeah. So another thing I love about this as well,
When
right?
he's fiddling with
He's got
his
his
claw,
his claw thing,
and it
right?
says
Yeah.
"total power."
Total power.
Yeah, and the music was good. It was very
Oh
kind of
man,
60s
the music was
jazzy
awesome.
type thing.
That really surprised me.
but it was-
especially
Yeah, it did stand
Yeah.
out, but it was very much telling you this is how you will feel in this bit. There was one bit in
Hmm.
particular when Bernard is in his Robo-Man suit and he joins in with the group of
yeah.
Robo-Men and he's shuffling
bit of
around and they
comedy.
eat dolly mixtures or something. Yeah, and the music was like laugh, scary, laugh, scary. But at the same time, I quite liked it. It was
innocent
pretty
times,
good.
my friend. You know,
Yeah.
you're right about the music. One of the things I thought about the music, more so on the first film, was how much like sort of a John Barry score it sounded. John Barry obviously scored the Bond films and a whole
Bond,
bunch of
yeah.
other stuff, and he also scored the Black Hole in the 70s. And the score to Doctor Who and the Daleks sort of reminded me of the score for the Black Hole, which was obviously, you know, at least sort of 10 years later on, if not more than that, I can't remember. But
Yeah.
you know, it's all pulling from that same source of material, you know, that same
Yeah.
melting pot.
Yeah, particularly in the
melting
second
pot
film, it
of
really did stand out.
cultural
It
stuff. I wasn't
Yeah.
going anywhere. I've sort of run out of words to say, but
Right.
that kind of thing.
stuff
Yeah.
to melt.
Yeah, Crucible. That's the word.
A crucible,
The pop culture crucible of the 1960s. There's plenty of it to go round, my friends. Yes. There you go. That's the word I should have. So
Yeah.
if we rehearsed this, then we would have this stuff all queued up to go.
Yeah, if we
Instead of just making up
scripted
as we
it,
go
yeah.
along.
I mean, these Jeff takes notes. You didn't
So,
even
yeah.
do that.
It's all in my head.
You sure?
Most
Well, he normally
I do
takes
normally,
notes, to be
yeah.
fair.
I was too
for it.
busy watching it. I was just
Yeah, he
enjoying
does
it this
normally.
time, to be honest.
Yeah, I didn't take a huge number of notes because I was just sort of engrossed in it. Really, yeah, I particularly like the second one. You know, I like the first one a lot, but I really like this one. It was good fun. Some great Dalek action in it, like I said, and you know, good sets. And there was a nice bit near the beginning when the guy on the street goes up to the TARDIS and it dematerializes and he falls
this is
over in the same
the
shot.
prologue
And then,
where the burglary scene happens.
Oh yes.
That's it. Yeah. Then he looks at the camera and he's like, you know.
Fourth wall. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a really good.
It was
effect
quite
shot,
good
I
actually.
thought. So
Yeah.
that was
Again,
quite
that was a
cool.
nice
Yeah.
little story as well, wasn't it? Introducing Tom Campbell as a sort of
He just loves whacking
he
people around the
just
head.
whack people, doesn't he? That's unlike Roy
Yeah.
Castle's Ian Chesterfield, right? Tom Campbell just knocks people on the head with his big stick. That's it.
Yeah.
But also kind of justifies the whole police box thing as well, doesn't it?
Yes.
That little scene.
Mm.
Because he's knocked on the head and he's chasing after the burglars. He blows his whistle. Obviously, no walkie-talkies in those days. So what does he see at the corner of the street?
Yeah, who's going to hear the whistle?
A police box. He runs into the
He
police
sees
box
the
to make
box,
a call to his other police friends, and suddenly finds himself in Doctor Who's TARDIS.
So this is when Father had to educate
Yeah.
me on why police boxes were used.
I did do that, didn't I?
Because
That's
But you
interesting.
did say, is that why?
I was like, oh,
So what, can the public use them as well, you said?
Well, do you know?
yeah.
And I said, yeah, that's why it goes.
Do you know
free
what?
for use
It's
of-
Yeah,
not.
I gathered that. I
and all
just
that
didn't
stuff.
know
Yeah.
like how they were used.
It's just one of the times I can be really clever.
Yeah, well, I'm also clever.
It doesn't happen
so-
often, sadly.
But it's not unreasonable for it. We don't have them anymore. And, in
They
years to
just
come,
hold
like
defibs.
my kids will see. yeah, and my kids will see phone boxes and be like, "What's that?" They don't know.
Yeah, actual phone boxes. Never mind the whole police box thing. Actual phone boxes are just anathema now.
An actual phone
No,
box.
they
Yeah.
hold defibs.
Yeah.
They hold defibs. Some
They
have
do, you're
flowers as
right.
well.
They
have, like,
do
flower
hold
pots and,
defibs, yeah.
some
Yes,
art and stuff
yeah.
like that going on.
Lovely decoration.
Yeah. Anyway, we've gone off topic.
So we I really enjoyed this one a lot.
What did you make?
And like you, Paul, I'd
Sorry,
go.
Geoff. I didn't mean to
desk is
interrupt.
the
What did you make of
Oh,
the
sorry, I was-
plot for this? Then let's talk about some
PLOT.
story. So the Daleks want to mine the core of the planet and drive it around the universe like a bus, doing death and destruction. I mean,
So fun.
I've seen this a lot, right? And I cannot get my head around that at all.
I
To
love
be
it
honest
so
with you,
much.
but I don't care. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's objectively the worst film plot ever.
It's objectively bad.
It's brilliant.
Such good fun.
It's
Isn't it?
You are wrong to enjoy it. It's brilliant. It's so silly and.
Just imagine
I've not-
a whole bunch of Daleks piloting the magnetic core, right? Quote of the Earth around the universe, dealing out death and destruction. It is literally like
For some
that is
reason,
that planet.
I'm just picturing them.
Exterminate. Drive the core into that planet.
I'm picturing them like the minions for some reason, going, going.
That would be crazy. And yeah,
I don't think I don't go to watch. I wouldn't go to watch a Dalek film and be like, I hope this really talks to me about the human condition. So when they want to blow up the Earth's crust to make the Earth into a giant pinball taxi, war machine, Death Star, I think that's brilliant. It's so silly and sci-fi and over the top and 60s and yeah. It's good. It's good fun.
It is a lot of fun, isn't
I
it?
liked
But
it.
I kind of get the feeling that Russell T Davies was lifting off bits of this for the Stolen Earth and Journey's End. Because
Yes.
again, you've literally got a whole bunch of Daleks and Davros, who wasn't around back in these days, who kidnapped a whole bunch of planets so they can do something with them. So they have steered them out of their normal orbits into this crucible thing where the gravity apparently all works, all the celestial mechanics of it all, in order to make a reality bomb that is going to... I don't know what it's going to do at that point. I'd lost it. But again, it's all part of that weird, balmy, bonkers sci-fi nonsense.
Yeah. I just think with things like this, sometimes it's going to be silly, and I suppose you just have to accept I'm going to enjoy it, or try to, and suspend my disbelief, or I'm just going to get really irate because this is unrealistic. And I think if you're feeling that, you're watching a show about a police box that travels
But
in time and
I
space
think a
with an
lot of it
alien
though
and two hearts.
depends on how the story is presented. So if it's a very kind of silly and joyous story, that's how it's got to be. That's how it's got to be presented. It's got to be packaged in that way, and the story
Yes.
has to
Yeah,
have
you're
all
right,
those
yeah.
kind of cues in it that says literally
Yeah.
signposts. This is a happy, joyous, ridiculous, bonkers story. I'm not going to try and thread in a whole bunch of narrative stuff that's going to make you apply some deep
No.
and meaningful literary criticism to it. But what happens sometimes, I think, is that some stories do that whilst also trying to be bonkers and silly and crazy. So you're going to
Yeah.
have people who pick up on either side of those things and are going to find it difficult to reconcile, I believe. So, if you're of a certain type who likes to look for deeper, darker meanings and, narrative subtext and meta-critical layers of this, that and the other, then
Yeah, I think all of that stuff is good. It's just some stuff's going to have it.
it's not going to be
Yeah,
there in Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD.
No. And you can't look at something like that and be like, it was as shallow as a puddle, because, well, yeah,
puddles are very deep.
it's not. Well, they are, but you've ruined my analogy with that. So
I'm not very good at metaphors.
She is. She does it all the time, mate.
but
Welcome to my life.
you just. So we recently saw some news about a proposed third film, didn't we? In the Doctor Who series.
I think I was reading in Doctor Who magazine where the guy, I can't get my hands on it now, it's around somewhere, but the guy said, it could be that one. The guy there said there was never a third film discussed. So I don't know
Well,
what the
really?
truth of it is. I don't know. It's one of these. Might not be either.
Well, I'd read that it was a plan to do a two-Doctor story with possibly John Pertwee's Doctor and somebody else,
Actually,
not Cushing.
Yes, you could be right now. That does ring a bell. Yeah. Well,
I haven't read it in DWM. I looked it up online, but yeah, there was some talk of something else. Yeah, but it never happened. Doctor Who's Greatest Adventure, and it was going to be involving crabs that were not the macra, but some book adaptation or something.
But I think a lot of this stuff is just how movies kind of evolved, though, isn't it? Because I think was the second film 2150 wasn't actually as successful as the first one, and because it cost more money,
Really,
it didn't. It cost more money. It didn't make as much money, so it was essentially considered a bit of a fail. And I think times had kind of moved on by then anyway, and audiences were wanting something a little bit more. But I think the idea of a Doctor Who film has always been around, hasn't it? Even right up till now, I think.
Well, not that long ago with Chris
Exactly,
Columbus
yeah, there you go.
talking about.
You were saying how it's
You know,
really weird how there's only
well, he-
been 3 Doctor Who
Yeah,
films.
right. Yeah.
Like, because it's so big, you'd think there'd
Yeah.
be more, but there really isn't.
No, it's just those three. isn't
No,
it?
there isn't. No, yeah, Chris Columbus. He made out that it was all go, didn't he?
I
To
don't know,
do the
mate.
movie, and then
You know
Moffat
more
was
about that
like,
than I do, I think.
yeah, he claimed that it was all all on board and going ahead and everything, and the Moff was like, I
Again,
don't think so.
that was all through the 90s as well. When Doctor Who was off
Yeah.
air, and it was Steven Spielberg, and it was various other people, and the Hoff was up for it at one point, and it was going to be
Really?
done through Amblin Entertainment, and it ended up being through Universal, and then 20th Century Fox, and all the rest of it. And it's just, these things have a long and complex. I kind of wish when we get to these sort of things that things like Doctor Who actually don't happen in cinema, because it just seems they all seem to get tied up in all kinds of legally stuff, and I think it is because the rights in the second half of the 90s didn't really be. Did they? I don't know. I don't know too much about it, but it was really messy with the rights and the BBC and Universal and what's his name? Seagull. What's his name? Seagull.
Oh,
Philip Seagull.
Philip.
that's him, yeah.
Philip,
The 96
not Stephen.
movie. It was all too many people have
Yeah.
too much of a stake and too much ownership in tiny little bits of it. Nobody agrees
Yeah.
on anything, so nothing ever gets done,
No.
or it doesn't
Nothing
happen for
happens,
years and
no.
years and years. Then when it eventually happens, it's got to be done to a deadline to be released and everything else.
Yeah.
And what ends up is a rushed out product that just fails more than it succeeds.
Well, there's that happened with Fantastic Four. I think it was Roger Corman. He had to make a film, and it was a terrible movie, but he had to do something to be able to.
Yeah, because people
hold on
invested
to the
then, aren't they?
rights
They've given their money over, and they've got to do something with it or send it back.
And it happened with something else recently. What was it? Maybe Netflix had to do something with Daredevil by a certain date, and they failed. So that's how the rights came back to Marvel. Quite a famous example is Spider-Man's movie rights. They were an absolute mess. At one point, James Cameron was going to do the film with DiCaprio playing Peter Parker, and I think Arnie being Doc Ock, which would have been incredible. But he said that the rights were so frustrating on it that basically nobody could work out who had what could happen and where. And it's still a mess now, but they've managed to work it.
And a lot of film companies kind of come and go as well, don't they? They're set up by the producer, by the director.
They do. Well, that's like the Terminator.
Or they come together because there are, a few people involved. So, say you and me got together, we set up another company just to purely have somewhere to put the money, the investment for making a film. We might put something into it, but then we'll go around to all our friends. They'll put something into it. They'll want a stake in it. And then we could end up with like 20 different
money.
She'll want something out of it. There's no doubt about that. And then we just got a real mess by the end of it. We've got a product that nobody owns, but everybody wants ownership of, and nobody can do anything because we got to have agreement on the whole thing. Which ended up talking about something else.
Well, but that also happened with Terminator rights. Did you ever hear the rumor that Michael Jackson wanted to play the Doctor?
No, really? I didn't know that. Is that an actual prop rumor, or do you just make that up now?
Yeah, apparently. No, I didn't just make it.
But you know
up,
what I mean?
no.
When it comes to announcing people like Christopher Eccleston, you just think, it's just another rumour. Why would Christopher Eccleston want to play the Doctor? Why would Paul McGann even want to play? These sort of people back in those days, and you think, actually, it's true. And then he announced Billy Piper,
I was going to say,
pop starlet who ran off with Chris Evans back in the day.
Yeah.
Not Chris Evans, Chris Evans.
And then you think, well, another one. But these rumours come about. The one I had the other day was that Spielberg was going to direct Fantastic Four, and you think, I just don't believe it. Where does this come from? There must be an origin somewhere.
It's media, media and social media, and people looking for hits.
American film studio Paramount Pictures expressed interest in producing a theatrical Doctor Who film that starred Jackson.
Is that true?
It's on tardis.fandom.com.
Oh, it must be true then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's on the internet, so chances are it's true, but
Anyway, we are digressing slightly in our chat about movies.
Yes, we are. Sorry, if you're still listening, thanks.
Yeah, I don't know. But okay, so there's a lot of love out there for these films, and if there isn't, I feel it anyway. I've got a lot of affection, a lot of fondness for these, and I'm really pleased that they're out in glorious 4K restoration, which I have, which means you really can see the strings. And actually, there's the thing that I like about this, because in doing these restorations, right, they could have quite easily deleted the strings. They could have done that. They're like, no, this is
George
genuine.
Lucas.
This is what it is. They could have got rid of all the little scratches and bumps on the Dalek casings just to make things a little bit smoother, CGI'd it up a little bit here and there, but no, they didn't.
No.
It's the film as was intended to be seen at cinema back into
the writer's intent.
Exactly. Well done, Freya. Yes, thank you for that.
I had to write it my courseway up 5 times.
Amazing. Thanks for your contribution. It's noted.
So we should probably draw this special 60s episode to a close. Would you like to take us out, Paul, with your special voice?
I can do that. Yes. Let me prepare.
Action.
Oh my gosh! You should see him going into the zone, everyone.
Right, here we go.
Yeah, sorry, just
3, 2, 1. And now, as we come to the end of this recorded podcast, we wish you all a very, very good night, and thank you all for listening to me, Paul, and Geoff, and Freya. From all of us to all of you, wherever you are across the world, stay safe, be good, and be nice to your mother and father. This is me, Doctor Who, signing out. Good night, boys and girls.
Lovely,
was that all right?
Father.
That's good, wasn't it?
Beautiful.
Excellent.
Father.
Excellent.
Good.
Well, you just
Look at
called
it.
Father.
Father.
Can you do you'll get us killed, or worse, expelled?
Yeah,
Oh
do
yes.
that
Oh,
one.
I
Do
can
that.
do that one.
Go on, then.
I'm going to bed. For either of you, come up with another clever idea to get us killed, or worse, expelled. And she storms off to her bath.
Yeah, that's it.
Bedroom.
And then Ron goes, she's mental.